And welcome to today's Q&A session with the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce on the implications of the conflict in Ukraine for local businesses. I'm Raj Kandola, Head of Policy at the Chamber, and I'd like to welcome you to today's session. Now, many across the business community will be utterly dismayed by the unfolding events in Ukraine, and of course our thoughts go out to the people of Ukraine and their loved ones across the world whose lives have been utterly devastated by this crisis. At the Chamber, we're a leading business organisation that's on hand to help businesses trade locally and internationally. And throughout the coming weeks, the Chamber will be working to connect our members to the latest intelligence on the emerging situation and support them in unpicking the implications for local businesses. We are currently working with our expert members and patrons to produce bite-sized briefing videos and resources on key areas like this one today. And I'm thrilled to say we're joined by Phil Bindley, MD for Cloud and Security at Intercity Technology, to discuss the possible threat of cyber attacks. So Phil, from your perspective then, how do you think cyber attacks might be used in the Russia-Ukraine crisis?
Thanks, Raj. I think there's probably two main areas to focus on. One is that there's obviously the potential for huge disruption from cyber attacks in any business at any time, and during this crisis, that risk is heightened. There is no shadow of a doubt about that. But it's more about the sort of the modus operandi and the raison d'etre behind why these attacks will be launched, and they fall broadly into two camps. The first of which is to cause disruption. So I want to disrupt an organization. I want to prevent it from doing something. I want to make things difficult. That's kind of the first thing, just that purely to disrupt and to interrupt and to make things difficult. The second area that we need to think about, and this is particularly relevant if we think about ransomware, is actually as these sanctions start to bite, the Russian government will be needing to raise funds. And ransomware is a very, very lucrative way about going about raising significant sums of money to help plug the gaps that the sanctions will bring. So I think we need to think about it in the context of those two things.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And in terms of those two particular areas you mentioned then, so how do you think businesses in Greater Birmingham could be affected by the increased risk of cyber attacks? I mean, people talk about the spillover from attacks on Ukrainian institutions finding their way into wider circulation or directly as sanctions intensify.
Yeah, I think that's right. The risk of sort of collateral damage, because as and when these new variants of malware or ransomware are launched, they can be fairly indiscriminate, but equally they can be very targeted. So I think you need to take it in the round from that perspective. You know, is your organization likely to be a direct target? Is there a reason why you would be targeted? I mean, perhaps if you're in the public sector, for example, and you're providing services to citizens, that's a great sort of target just to cause mayhem for no monetary gain. But on the other hand, if you're in the private sector, perhaps it's more about monetizing those attacks. So they're the two areas, you know, as I said in the previous sort of section. Why would you be targeted? Are you likely to be a target? What would be the impact if you're targeted? And just thinking about that from your organization's perspective as to why you would be a target. Is it just purely a spray and hope attack whereby you just happen to become, you know, full victim of it? Or is it more likely that you'll be directly targeted?
Yeah. So it's really about businesses taking that kind of initial step back and having those conversations to look at potential scenarios. I mean, what do you think are the steps that businesses can take to prepare themselves for disruption once they've had those internal conversations and what might be a possibility?
Yeah, so I think like anything in information security, you know, there is no such thing as 100% secure. It just doesn't exist. But it's making it as difficult as possible and as tough and to a degree as inexpensive as possible for the potential attacker to be able to breach your defenses that you have in place. And a lot of that goes down to really basic security hygiene. We're not talking about going out and making massive investments in a completely new cyber defense policy for your organization. A lot of it comes down to basic housekeeping, you know, making sure that all your systems are patched and up to date, making sure that your antivirus definitions are all up to date, making sure that you've reviewed your firewall rules so there aren't great big holes in your perimeter. All these very basic things like user identification and access management, making sure that you don't have people with elevated privileges to do things on your systems that you don't need them to do. So there's a lot of very, very basic stuff that organizations should be doing anyway, but at this time you should really be spending some time and effort to make sure that those things are in place, that they are as robust as you think they are, making sure that you do have visibility of everything that's going on. This is the one key area, Raj, that I say organizations should focus on. We kind of come from that world of traditional perimeter security, and we're inside the corporate network and we're all safe. Well, obviously the pandemic's had a huge effect on that, because I'm working from home, others are working from home, we're everywhere on anything, and everything now becomes a potential threat to our organization. In information security, we talk very much about the concepts of zero trust networking, so that anything is a potential attack vector into our organization, be that a mobile device, a laptop, whatever it may be. It's not just about that corporate environment anymore, it's about thinking a bit wider. And therefore, how do I, as an organization, as a business, whoever I may be, understand all of those potential areas that could come and affect me? And the only way you can do that is if you have visibility of them. So that visibility question is a really key one that organizations need to ask themselves. Do I have the level of visibility that I need to have to understand what's going on, not just outside the castle walls, but also inside the castle walls?
And it sounds like that's obviously something that businesses should be doing, obviously, regardless of this situation. But if anything, the events unfolding in Ukraine have kind of accelerated that longer term thinking. And just in regard to that, and thinking about the longer term outlook for businesses in Greater Birmingham, that trade with Russia or Ukraine when it comes to cyber attacks, are there any final points or messages you'd like to raise on that particular area?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the more that you are involved in that kind of commerce, be it cross-border into Russia or into the Ukraine, the more at risk you are. There's no doubt about that, because the potential impact of the cyber attack against your organization, be that from either side, as it were, is heightened, because you affect the opposition if you can do something that disrupts something that is beneficial to them. So if you do have those trading relationships, and obviously, again, one of the key things for me, I think that organizations should be doing at this moment, and something that I've advocated for many, many years. I'm actually a certified information system security professional. So this is my area of expertise, I suppose you might say, without sounding too big-headed about it. But really, one of the key things that I found in a number of organizations is they have to react very quickly to a very fast-changing set of circumstances when a cyber incident of any description occurs. And one thing that I would definitely advocate for people is, if you don't have one, you need to have an incident response plan. You need to understand how you're going to react and the things that you're going to do before it happens, and actually practice it, rehearse it, do desktop type exercises where you plan, you have all the stakeholders involved, so that when you do need to actually react and deal with an incident, think about these incidents as a case of if, rather when, not if. And therefore, having that playbook that you go through, that you've practiced, that you've rehearsed, that puts you on the front foot immediately, whether that's communicating with your customers, communicating with the general public, communicating with your suppliers, whatever it may be, so that you have that robust plan in place rather than trying to invent one on the go.
Yeah. So planning for various permutations, having the right kind of support infrastructure in place. But like you said, visibility is absolutely key as well. Well, Phil, that's been really, really helpful. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate you giving up your time to share really valuable insight into what's happening right now and what the potential impact could be on businesses across Greater Birmingham. So I'd just like to say thank you to Phil, and obviously to our chamber members watching. Remember to keep in touch via your relationship manager, or if you have any questions that you might have about the current situation and what you'd like to see in terms of lobbying points and advocacy from the chamber, please do get in touch with either my team or your contacts at the chamber. We can take it from there, and hope to see you again soon. Many thanks.